So here we have another cool watch. This is by a company called Moser. They're an independent brand, and I think like a lot of other companies in the industry, they were sort of around in the 19th century and then dead for a while. And then the brand was resurrected in the mid-2000s and are actually making really cool stuff. They make all of their own movements, and they have some really interesting movements in the collection. This is their simple time-only model. It's called the Monard, and this particular one is in white gold. And then you'll notice it has this really beautiful, they call it Smoke Fume dial. And that's really the defining characteristic of this watch. So they brought out these Fume dials a couple of years ago, and they're really just killer. So you have this dial, it really plays with the light. You can see it's super reflective. But it goes from very dark to very light, and the smokeness of it really travels around the dial. There's my head. And so, yeah, so it's obviously the defining characteristic of this particular model. You have these white gold indices applied that also really play with the light and sparkle. And the white gold case is actually a really interesting case. It's got these cutouts here on the side, and the bezel sort of comes up like this. So it's definitely a very interesting piece, even though it's very simple. And on sort of face value, one could think that it was boring, but it's got a lot of really interesting elements. The case is a very classic case, but at the same time, very much not classic. And the dial obviously is pretty unique and really beautiful. So you've got just these white gold hands and white gold indices. They make this particular model also with, I think, a small seconds down here at 6. I prefer this one when the dial itself is such a important element of the watch. I don't see why you would want to break it up with a small seconds. And I love large continuous running second hands. So here we have the movement. Again, all in-house movements. And the really cool thing about this watch is it's got a 7-day power reserve, which is pretty amazing for a mechanical watch. It's manual wind, and you actually have a power reserve indicator down here on the back of the watch. So this one's almost fully wound actually, but we can wind it up a little bit. And obviously you can see your winding train there. Moser's done a lot of innovation with their balance wheels and balance springs and escapements. And so there you can see it ticking away. And I've heard that not only does this have a claimed 7-day power reserve, but I've heard that it actually will run for like 9 or 10 days without losing time. So it's pretty amazing movement for this simple watch. Obviously you don't have quite the finishing quality of like a Longa, which you can see on my channel too. But it is nicely finished. You do have these gold chatons for the rubies, and you have some finishing on the bridges here. So I would call it a sort of high-end finish, but definitely not a sort of super high-end finish. And that's basically what there is to this watch. You get a cool case, beautiful movement, really cool feature of the long power reserve, and this kick-ass dial. And here you can see it on the wrist. It's a nice size. It's fairly large. I think it's probably about 41 millimeters, or 40 maybe, but something like that. It takes up good wrist real estate. And you can see how these interesting cutouts of the case actually make it look pretty cool on the wrist. So you can see it. It's just a really nice watch. And there you have it. That is the Moser Monard in white gold with the smoke dial.